KTYT, I'm Nomiki Konst here on Capitol Hill in Congressman Tim Ryan's office. Congressman Tim Ryan represents the 13th District in Ohio, ranging from Akron, Ohio to Youngstown. Did I get that right?
Correct.
Thank you so much for taking time.
Including Kent State University.
Including Kent State, the famous Kent State,
yes.
politically.
Yeah.
Wow.
How about that?
So speaking of politics, there's quite a bit of news today in the Democratic Party in terms of the dysfunction. The former chairwoman of the Democratic Party, Donna Brazile, she was an interim chairwoman. She has a book coming out, and she published some excerpts from her book in Politico, and it just reignited a lot of the debate, the internal debate. Some of it's a little wonky, some of it's complete insider baseball.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the party is going through a transition, and not just the institution of the Democratic Party, but also the leadership. And you, notably, well, the story that won't go away,
right.
You challenged former Speaker Pelosi, Leader Pelosi, for a leadership position. What was the intention? Why did you do that?
Well, I felt like we needed a change. I think every one of us who is progressive woke up the day after the election, if you slept at all that night, thinking, what the hell just happened? And I think Barack Obama kind of moving off stage exposed a lot of the internal problems that we have as a party, what our brand is, what our message is, what we stand for. And I woke up the next day ready, asking myself, like I think we all did, I must not have done enough. And I worked my rear end off during the election. But my wife and I talked, and it was like, somebody's got to do something, and I think we need a change, and now's the time. And Trump won a lot of my areas in my district, did a lot better, won 2 of my 5 counties, which have been traditionally Democratic counties for the last, 20, 30 years. So I wanted to do more, and then I felt like we needed a change in Congress. New faces, new names, new brand, new message. And so I took the mantle and took the challenge. And I'm Irish too, and there's the old Irish saying, is this a private fight or can anyone get into it?
Oh,
yeah,
that's good. I like that.
So I'm all right with that.
How did the rest of your delegation respond? Because you got quite a few votes.
I thought we did really well. We got about a third of the votes, and there aren't as many blue dogs. Most of our caucus is progressive, so I got a lot more than anyone else ever had within the progressive group. So I was pretty proud of that, and I think there's a general sense that from a branding perspective, we have to start winning Ohio, Michigan. We have to be able to go compete in the South. We can't just write off the South. And I think there's a moral imperative there too. It's like, look, these are American citizens. They're human beings. They're living in poverty. Their wages haven't gone up. A lot of the economic issues, they don't have health care, they're losing their health care under the Republicans. Like, we need to go there. We need to show up and say, look, let me make the argument for you. You don't have to like me, you don't even have to vote for me, but I'm going to come and see you and tell you why I think the Democrats are best for you to vote for. And you look at West Virginia and Kentucky, those used to be Democratic strongholds. You look even some of the southern states used to be Democratic strongholds on those economic issues. And we've lost that, then we stopped going there. And so my pitch was, we need to play in every corner of the country and go and get those people to vote for us.
This seems to be the messaging debate that the Democrats are having. It's not so much old guard versus new guard, although that does exist, but it's whether or not the Democrats should put economics front and center and not lead with, forgive the saying, but this is the cliche, guns, gays, and vaginas. In some districts, right?
I've never heard it quite.
You've never heard it? Oh, it's very common.
Very good.
People respect you more clearly because I hear it a lot. But putting guns at the top of the ticket, not understanding that maybe some Democrats own guns. You're from Ohio. I'm sure that's very common in Ohio. Or when you talk about issues like reproductive rights, that there are some communities that would normally fall in line with Democrats, but because there's some candidates that have campaigned exclusively on that, they're losing a faction. But economics seems to be the intersection, the issue that intersects all divides, including Republicans. Why is this a fight? It just seems logical. It's the economy's stupid. It's what the Democrats have won on time and time again.
It's almost a false choice, too, to say, well, look, we have to be for issues of equality and justice and those things, or the economy. And in my estimation, so many of these issues are tied to the economy. I mean, if you want to talk about, decriminalization of marijuana, that in a lot of ways, yeah, it's a justice issue. It's also an economic issue. A young kid, makes a mistake, gets caught. You want them to never get a job the rest of their lives because they may have done something wrong when they were young. So that's an economic issue. You talk about reproductive rights and access to contraception. Those are economic issues too for women and their families. So all of these in one way or another, I think, tie in. But here's the thing. If you have a series of issues that people feel very strongly about, which I do, and if you look across the board, I agree with our position on all of those issues. The thing that unites all of us is the economic issue. Wages have been stagnant for 30 years. If you look at the last time we had tax reform, 31 years ago, since then, 96% of income growth has gone to the top 10%. So if you live in Youngstown or Akron or Gary, Indiana or Biloxi, Mississippi, you've not seen a pay raise. All of this wealth went to the top 1%. And so my hope is that if we're going to help any of these groups within the Democratic tent, which we want to do, we need a message that appeals to all of them, and maybe some that wouldn't agree with us on any of those, but would say, boy, Bernie Sanders or Tim Ryan or one of these people are talking about the economy, and I may disagree with them on some of these other issues, but they're going to increase my wages, they're going to secure my pension and make sure my family has health care. I'm voting for them. And like most relationships, anyone who's married knows you don't agree with people, even the ones you love the most. You don't agree with them on everything. So let's find that message that resonates with the majority of the American people and push it and get it implemented.
Now, you're not a political consultant, but I'm sure you've worked with a lot of political consultants and pollsters.
I try not to.
You try not to, but it's a function of the industry.
Yeah.
How much of this is simply about message or more? Meaning, if we're not going to Biloxi, if Democrats aren't going to Biloxi, Mississippi, because maybe a pollster said, well, our top line issues that, progressives can't win in Biloxi, but we're polling on these other issues, the justice issues, but not polling on economics, so we're just not going to invest in Biloxi. How much of it's just about message, and how much of it is about message plus investment?
Well, it's definitely both. But we should have a message you could take anywhere, and then we have to have the courage to recognize we got to go to some places that maybe they're going to push back on our message, and they're going to want to talk about something else, and their opinion of you is a stereotype or a caricature of us that Fox News presents, for example. Or Breitbart presents. All Democrats are for X, Y, and Z. And sometimes I read some of these articles, I'm like, what are they even talking about? Like, I have no idea. They'll put one little story that happened in one little town somewhere, and they make it a national story and try to, associate all Democrats with something that is controversial. And we've got to have the courage to go to that community and say, look, we may disagree on a few things. Let me tell you what we agree on. And then I've always agreed with what Howard Dean did. I thought the 50-state strategy was critically important for us, and it's one of the reasons we won the House back in 2006, was because Howard Dean had the vision to broaden the map and say we want to compete everywhere. So that's where the resources come in. And if I could just add one layer to that, it's that it's not a one-off. It's not like, oh, we went to Alabama and we tried to win and it didn't work out, so we're going to pack up and leave. Because that's, in the last few years, that's kind of been the strategy. Oh, we'll give it a shot and we'll put $5 million at the end of the race, and if we don't win, everybody leaves, they all go home, and we don't build on it. So the next step is sustained investment in these communities, building out the indivisible, building out the swing left, building out these groups and providing some seed money. It doesn't have to be a lot to keep those groups going, to continue to add, because they're the foot soldiers on the ground making the argument, knocking on a door, because people are going to be much more inclined to believe a neighbor who knocks on their door and tells them I'm a Democrat because my health care issue that my kid went through, and it was Obamacare that helped me be able to afford it and save the kid's life. That's a heck of a lot more persuasive than a Tim Ryan or somebody on CNN saying X, Y, or Z, why you should be a Democrat. That's so much more powerful. So our investments have to be over the long term to build that long-term engagement out.
Meaning less about the coastal strategy and the centralized, DC Beltway speaking to everybody else,
Yeah.
and California, New York dictating to the. It became a parody in a sense that the Democratic Party is exactly what Fox News was representing, just based on electoral math.
Right.
That's how it ended up.
Think about how that happened. I grew up just outside of Youngstown. My grandfather was a steel worker. My grandmother was in AFSCME, union people, union town, working class. And I look back and I think, how in God's name did the Democrats get pinned as the elite coastal, party? It's mind-boggling to think of as to what happened. And I'm not quite sure everybody completely understands the depth of our problem in some of these regions. The lack of brand, the brand that we want. I think it's pretty deep, and we've got to really engage in a spirited debate as to why we believe what we believe, and not be afraid to tell people.
So you are a leader in Congress. You're frequently put on these lists of the future of the Democratic Party. There's not a large bench. You're on it.
Yeah. Well, you know how to flatter a guy. I tell you what.
He's on the bench. Hey, that's a sports metaphor. That's a sports metaphor. We had an off-camera conversation about my lack of understanding of sports. So you're on the bench. How do we build that bench up, given that there are so many structural issues and not everybody's on the same page about messaging? And frankly, the leadership that's in place has been there for a very long time and may not be as aware, as you said, of the deeper problems happening in a lot of these localities. I grew up in Buffalo. I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I think, again, having a 50-state strategy, pulling talent from all corners of the country, and then competing in 70 or 80 congressional races. Even if, as I said, may not win it tomorrow. You may not win it in this cycle, but you're going to build it out. And I think even a little bit of money up front, $50,000, $100,000 to get a campaign manager, to get a social media team together, or just somebody to buy some ads and begin to have an organizing effort within that community is important. And candidate training and those kind of things that's how you build a bench. The whole country is a potential recruit for you. Even if maybe they weren't a Democrat, maybe bring them in. Maybe they align with you, but they never knew it. So casting a really wide net, competing everywhere, there's a certain power in saying, I believe in this message so much that I can take it to West Virginia, and I can win there. That's powerful. And I think that says, look, I'm willing to fight for what I believe in, and I believe it's good for you too. And let me tell you, coal miner in West Virginia, you're pretty aligned with the old steel worker in Youngstown, right? And if we can have some leadership that says, look at what we can do together, that's a pretty powerful argument.
With that being said, even though you're the grandson of union members and you're from Youngstown, Ohio, you started the meditation caucus.
I did. I did.
How elite of you.
Yeah, well,
no, I say that as a yogi. It's very powerful. What inspired you to start this meditation caucus? What is it?
It's called the Quiet Time Caucus.
Quiet Time.
And so once a week, we take 30 minutes.
It's great messaging, by the way.
Thank you. Well, I want people to come in. There's various types of meditation. There's various types of prayer, contemplation that people can do, both religious and secular. And we just want to carve out a space for people to be able to come in and do that. 4 members of Congress. We also do some stuff for staff. For them, we have different teachers come in and teach. And I actually got onto it growing up. I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school, and my grandparents prayed the rosary all the time. And I remember going down to their house. They lived a couple blocks from me, and I'd ride my bike down. And I'd go in, and the radio would be off, the TV would be off. They'd be sitting there praying the rosary. And it was just so chill And it always stuck with me. And then I went to a Catholic high school, played football, you know, Northeast Ohio football guy. And I remember seeing my coaches go into the chapel in the school, praying, meditating. So even the male, strong role models like my grandfather and my coaches took time for some basic contemplation, centering, meditation, prayer. And then as I got older, as a sports guy, I followed Phil Jackson, who coached the Chicago Bulls and Los Angeles Lakers, and I read about him, you know, doing meditation with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and then on, and now Tom Brady does yoga, and I think he's a meditator too. So I started to see these peak performers taking time every day to learn about how their mind works, learn about quiet time, reduce their stress. So I went on some retreats and learned how to do it, and it's really kept me fairly sane as a congressman in this environment. But I've seen it, and what I try to do here is I've seen it heal our veterans. And I've seen it get our vets off of the prescription drugs. It's very low cost, can save the VA a lot of money. So we've worked over the past few years to really start to implement it into the VA now. Some of the most packed classes at the VA now are, you know, mindfulness-based stress reduction, or acupuncture, or yoga, or Tai Chi. The David Lynch Foundation's doing a ton of stuff with transcendental meditation. That's healing vets. There's a group called Project Welcome Home Troops. They do a bunch of breathing and meditation with veterans, and it's healing them. You know, it's good for school kids, especially the secular stuff, helping them focus and concentrate, and we're seeing results. We've been doing it back home in Youngstown and Warren City schools, and the kids are not getting thrown out of class. They're able to focus. I mean, think about, you know this, and I know this, I think we all know it, the amount of screen time for our kids today while their brains are still developing. They're not looking people in the eye. They're not being able to focus and kind of mobilize their attention span, and that has significant effects on learning. And so I think this is a way, very low cost, very simple, for us just to take a break every day. A little time out, take 30 minutes, get your mind right, and then go off in your day. And if you try it, which I would encourage everyone to at least try it for 5 or 10 minutes for a week or two, you'll notice a significant difference in your life.
Where do people start if they want to? I mean, if you were to walk up to one of the elder Republican members, most conservative members of the delegation, right?
Yeah.
Who may not normally be open to it, how would you message? Try it out, and where do you start?
Well, I would say my hook would be.
Your hook.
My hook would be, you know, you're probably stressed out. You know, you're probably really anxious, or your blood pressure's up, or, you know, you have maybe had a health issue. That's always a good starting place. But there are some apps, you know, there's called a breathing app, that's the name of it, breathing app, and it's free. And it literally just slows down your breathing to, you know, like 6 or 7 a minute. So you know, in for 4 or 5 and out for 4 or 5, and you do that 6 or 7 times in a minute, and that has been shown through the research to really have significant impacts on your body, on your blood pressure, so I think it's the future of healthcare. I think it's the future of education, just as a fundamental thing. Like, before we go into math and science, let's teach emotional regulation. Let's teach focus. Let's teach kids how to concentrate. Like, to me, does that sound weird? That sounds pretty fundamental, and I think most parents want their kids to shake hands, look in the eye, be able to concentrate, you know, where are you at? Come here, come on back, you know. Because I'm worried about our kids growing up in this environment with so much screen time, and your brain's not fully developed till you're about 24 years old. So if you get kids that are using screen, and our son does too, our 3-year-old son does too, because you can learn so much, but you gotta limit it. And then I think you come in with these other approaches for how to really focus and concentrate your mind.
Have you received pushback?
Not really. Not here. I mean, you know, it's like, if you want to do it, do it. I'm not here to evangelize. I'm going to say, look, works for me. Here's the science. You know, Kobe Bryant did it. Tom Brady does it. If you want to do it, you know. And you're seeing it more with CEOs doing it now. You go to like the Cleveland Clinic or Mayo Clinic or University of Massachusetts Medical Center. They're all teaching this as a part of wellness. So you know, if we're going to move forward on a real plan for our own health in the country and bend the cost curve on healthcare, there's really two ways to go about it. One is diet and one is stress. And look, I'm not a prude on the diet front. I mean, I eat ice cream. You can see me eat chicken wings. I mean, I indulge. But I think for the most part, we've got to address getting fresh, healthy food that's affordable to our people in our schools, for example. You know, you can go to a school and you'll see a kid that gets a chocolate milk that has almost as much sugar in as a Coke, and a Rice Krispie treat for breakfast. And you do that for 18 years, that kid's going to have diabetes, and they're going to go into, a lot of these kids will go into the Medicaid program. So now you got a young kid that's 18 or 20 years old, they're in the Medicaid program, they have diabetes, which will lead to a series of other problems that will cost us a lot of money. And the other one is stress. Heart disease, high blood pressure, ulcers, cognitive dysfunction comes from both diet and stress. So part of a big long-term strategy for our country, if we're going to be realistic with each other, like we could talk about the other things and get people fired up, we're going to cut Medicare, or, you know, we're going to, government entitlement, we got to get healthy. And, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't mean you can't eat ice cream watching football. It just means 80% of the time, we've all better be kind of watching and creating an environment where, you know, we're growing this food in our inner cities so that we get rid of these food deserts and kids aren't eating at the corner store. And there's a strategy involved, but it's all kind of a mindful approach that's really seeing the problems as they are and then doing our best to fix them.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, there's obviously subsidies that are involved in this. And there's been a lot of recent exposés on how powerful the sugar industry is, and, you know, the soy industry, and why is it soy's in everything now. And you can go down the list of different industries, the wheat industry, they're all, you know, been pushing to get into our schools, to, you know, get into these food deserts where you have a corner store where you're getting all of your food and it's all, you know, Hostess and You know, Lay's potato chips. It's not an accident. There's a political strategy behind that. And so I think it's refreshing to hear somebody who is in office in Congress thinking about not just short-term healthcare problems, but also long-term. And frankly, from the perspective of, if we do want to cut down on these entitlements, we have to take care of our people, because it's a best sell.
You know, if you look at the budget now in Congress, I mean, they're cutting, I think, $500 billion out of the Medicare program, which is for our seniors, and almost $1 trillion out of the Medicaid program, which is for our seniors who are poor, and most of it's kids who are poor. So those two programs are being cut, and it's like, well, look, if you want to save money on these programs, you know, we have to deal with the diabetes epidemic. So right now, half the country has either diabetes or pre-diabetes. I mean, think about that.
Half of the country?
Either diabetes or pre-diabetes, and most of the people who are pre-diabetic don't even know it. So they're going to continue to go down the road of potentially getting diabetes. It's like, well, cutting those benefits doesn't seem like a very good strategy. I mean, we want to make sure everyone in America has health care and that it's affordable. So what's the answer to this? You know, like I said, these people who have diabetes or pre-diabetes, a lot of these kids are eating stuff we're putting in the schools for them to eat, and they get a free and reduced lunch. So now you're giving this, I mean, we're literally subsidizing the food to make it cheap that we're eating that gives us diabetes and helps contribute to the level of sickness that we have today in society. And then we subsidize the health care to take care of the people. And then we wonder why the average American's like, you guys are crazy in Washington. Like, what are you doing with my tax money? When we should be saying, look, the farmers aren't the problem here. The farmers are growing things that they can get paid to grow. So let's pay them, I'd even pay them a premium to grow healthy food, because it's going to bend the cost curve on the back end. So let's get these family farms who have been wiped out because of big agribusiness, let's help them grow the kind of food in order to help get us healthy. Let's help public institutions like universities and prisons and schools buy that food from the farmer, so there's a market for them. And then we're going to bend the cost curve in the long run. We're going to have a healthier country that's more productive, that's clearer thinking, and we're going to save money on health care, and then that frees up money to invest into research and additive manufacturing and renewable energy and the kind of rebuilding the country that we have to do. And I think a comprehensive strategy like that, most people go, that makes sense to me. That's my,
I mean, it makes sense. I'm sold. I don't know if those industries, how you see the fight between the insurance companies and healthcare and pharmaceutical companies and healthcare reform, Medicare for all. I assume there'd be it'd be them plus all these other industries fighting back.
I wonder if you can actually, if you communicate to the farmers that they're going to get paid and probably paid more, will help with any transition costs or loans that you've taken out for the old system and need to move you into the new system. But I would think if you're a health insurance company, you're probably down with healthier people.
I mean, a lot of them have the holistic programs attached to them now.
Yeah. So start reimbursing for mindfulness-based stress reduction. Start giving incentives for people who are losing weight, not smoking, doing everything right. The system is starting to slowly move into that direction. So I think the insurance industry, coincidentally enough, may be an ally to help with the food industry issue. So if we can start building coalitions of industries to say, hey, you're going to save money because you're going to not have to pay out, half the country has diabetes, help us right the system. I mean, there's going to be a fight.
There's always a fight.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
That's politics. So can we build a coalition with young people that this probably makes a lot more sense to, just because they're growing up in a different environment? I think it's a social justice issue for our kids who live in the inner city. I mean, they have an additional challenge into, the dangerous neighborhoods, tough schools, the issues that we're dealing with all over. Add on to that, you're sick, can't concentrate, people pumping you full of sugar and stuff. So I think we could build a really good coalition to make the kind of change that we want. And that's the kind of deep structural change that we need. Like I feel like sometimes we're just really petering around the edges here. And what the American people want us to do is provide some really bold ideas that make sense, that get to the heart of the problem. I mean, this is kind of where the mindfulness practice is like over time you see illusions and delusion. And in the political system now, especially with Trump, he's deluded in so many different ways, but he's always distracting, right? He's a shiny object over here, and let me throw gas on a very controversial issue over here. We need a collective kind of mindfulness approach of saying, okay, wait a minute, I know there's all this stuff going on, but like what's really, who's the Zen master, who's the Tom Brady, like there's 80,000 people screaming around you, and the game's on the line, and you're like in the zone, like this is what I'm dealing with right now. Kobe Bryant or whoever, LeBron James. How do we collectively do that? Like, okay, this is the issue and we're not going to let anyone throw us off it. And I know it's going to take 5 years or 10 years, but we're going to, President Kennedy, let us begin. And let's start moving down that road and let all this noise happen, but we're going to stay very focused. I think that's what leaders do. That's not what this current leader does, but great leaders keep everybody focused, moving in the same direction, addressing real problems, real challenges. And so hopefully we can start moving in that direction.
So full circle, it seems as if this country's lost its intent. You talk about that focus, intention is a big part of meditation, and maybe it's not so much about the Democrats' message as it is about what are their intentions for, leading us back together, putting all the pieces back together.
Yeah.
Where we were 10 years ago, you couldn't have these conversations. I'm looking forward to hearing what you and all the leaders that you recruit across the country have to say in 10 years from now. Hopefully a lot of these structural issues will be dealt with.
Hopefully we're moving in another direction. And I think, when you talk economically, if I could, real quick, globalization, automation, artificial intelligence, driverless trucks, diabetes. We have about 3 billion people that are going to move into the middle class in the next 20 years. Wow. Around the globe, obviously. 6 degrees Celsius increase in the climate and the temperature of the planet. These are huge issues for us. So we better put a plan together.
Yeah, sounds about right. It's existential.
Where are these people going to live?
Right.
So we need denser, walkable communities. We need more public light rail. Downtown living, and that could be fun. It could be, you know, there could be culture and music and art and amphitheaters and bike trails and parks. I mean, we could do this. You can have urban ag. There's an opportunity within the context of the climate change, of like all new industries that can capture carbon, regenerative agriculture, which is being seen as a huge opportunity. See, here's where I do get frustrated with the Democrats. I think sometimes we think too small, and we talk about going carbon neutral. We've got to reverse global warming.
Right.
It's got to be reversed. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. So we can say carbon neutral all we want, that ain't going to cut it. We need to reverse it. So what are the farming techniques that actually pull carbon out of the air and put it back into the soil where it belongs? What are the manufacturing techniques that can capture carbon and actually use it to build products that can then be recycled? I mean, we've got to move away from, we're going to take stuff out of the ground, we're going to make it into something, and we're going to throw it away. Like, do that with another 3 billion people, and we're going to run out of silicon, we're going to run out of the minerals that we need. I mean, it's not doable. And I think the frustration right now, my frustration is the political system has not identified all of these problems and then put a little plan together. Neither political party has. Put a plan together, say, look, this is how we need to deal with this, and here's our plan. Well, the other party's talking about what, I mean, everything seems so little in our politics today, just so inadequate, just so not up to the task of what the really big challenges are. And I think laying the challenges out there and telling kids in college, like, I tell my 14-year-old son, you know, like, dude, you better start thinking of some stuff. Like, there's some big problems.
This is on you.
This is like, yeah, no pressure. You're 14. Good luck with the 9th grade football game today, you know?
Also,
but,
watch TYT.
Yeah.
Like a prep course.
Well, he could, yeah, I mean, he needs to start understanding, like, he's in engineering, he's really good at math, his family has a construction company. I said, you need to start thinking about taking that company to the next level on how you build environmentally. You know, how you build with products that can be recycled, that you can take the thing down and replace it and not continue to take. And I think all young people need to start thinking about that. But you need a challenge. Like, you need your leaders to challenge you, not leaders to say, oh, it's that group's fault or that group's fault, or what do we disagree on that we can talk about today? Like, really? Like,
And some of that is it's reflected right now. You know, the majority of those under 36 are registered as independents. I think it's, if the parties are not looking at that with fear and saying, where have we failed? Why are we not talking about these systemic issues? Millennials' #1 concern is climate change. And then economics. Which, you know, there's a lot there.
Yeah, well, it's their world. I mean, if you're 20 now and, you know, we continue to move in the direction, they're going to say they live another 70 years. That's a complicated world. A lot
of storms.
Yeah, it's a lot of storms, a lot of flooding, a lot of sea level rise, and what that effect on communities that are going to go underwater. And, you know, so we're freewheeling here pretty well. But, you know, how we structure our communities with seawalls and, you know, taking the wires out from the poles and putting them into the ground, and are we going to get broadband in every community? And, like, how are we building resiliency into our economy too? So it's not like 1950, well, we need an infrastructure bill. We're going to build roads, going to build the interstate highway. It's like, dude, it's a lot more complicated than that. You know, it's sustainability, resiliency in our communities. Like, we're moving into a whole new, really, it could be a very exciting phase of our economy, but we haven't yet kind of captured that and, like, excited people about.
And the focus.
Yeah. It's like, well, you know, and Trump's the great contrast, because, you know, Trump's sitting there going, we're going to bring the coal mines back. You know, I mean, mining jobs are down like 33,000 jobs since 2010 or 11. Like, and that industry's getting automated. We're going to bring the steel jobs back. It's like, they just took down the last integrated steel mill in Warren, Ohio, just last week. They, like, took it down. So, like, that's unfair to tell people that. Give us a plan, put us back to work, and it needs to be public and private too. And I think, like the Democrats, you know, we can be tough on, you know, corporate profits, and we can have a progressive tax code, and I'm for increasing capital gains tax and all of these things to capture the money. to help, but we've got to reinvest it back into the communities. And then we've got to work with business. Like the government can't hire everybody in Youngstown, Ohio.
Right.
We need private sector development. So how do we get some of the wealth that's happening on Wall Street or in Silicon Valley and get those innovators and entrepreneurs creating jobs and businesses in places like Youngstown?
And thinking long term about their, the worker. It's
Yeah.
we are moving towards automation, but there should be a balance between
Totally.
understanding communities and completely, wiping out
Yeah.
industries prematurely
Right.
for their own
Yeah.
their own gains.
Yeah. So if you look at
is-
venture capital, 80% of it goes to 3 states, California, Massachusetts, New York. And 90% of it goes to men, and 1% of it goes to African Americans. So that in itself, like this is the money that's getting moved
Right.
to be invested, and it goes to 3 states and 90% of men and 1% are African Americans. Like that's a broken system.
Right.
So what do we do collectively with those independent young voters, with Democrats, with progressives to say that system ain't working?
Right.
It's led to this problem, which led to Trump being president. So we better figure this whole thing out.
I hope you figure it out.
Thanks.
I'm not going to be figuring it out. I'll be reporting on it.
We need quiet
and
time.
chiming in. I'm going to go meditate now. I hope you do too. Thank you so much,
Thanks for having me.
Congressman.
Thanks.
It's been a
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you.